All right. Hopefully this is working. Someone will show up sometime and tell me one way or another. I just thought I'd test out some live stream equipment that I got. So if you're watching this in the future and it's super awkward, just know that that's the reason. So this week I put out a ton of Helix preset updates. And so I thought I'd just kind of run through them. So yeah, if you have any requests as we go along here, just let me know. I don't even know if anyone's in here yet. Probably just play a little bit and see correctly or not. I was messing around with some settings this morning. Someone leave me a comment and let me know if it's coming through all right. I have no clue. Anyone? Bueller? Jason, thank you. Thank you. Someone's out there. This is just my first time trying out all this live stream equipment. So I've got my interface here, but I'm using this as a preamp and running into a Blackmagic ATEM switcher that I've been using for guitar lessons for the last year or so. So I think I'm going to upgrade some equipment in my home studio here and try and get a better streaming setup so I can do this a little bit more often if it's something people find worthwhile. Let me know if you're a Helix user and you have questions about any of the presets I put out this week. If you had downloaded presets for me in the past, I sent out an email just letting everyone know that the complete preset library with it's got 85 presets in. I just put out a big update this week. It also includes some impulse responses, some custom acoustic impulse responses. If you watched the video I did a week or two ago, I walked through the process of creating your own impulse response for an acoustic instrument. More correctly defined, it's actually an EQ match. It's a corrective EQ. So an impulse response it measures EQ over time. It's typically used to capture the reverberance, the resonance of a space, an acoustical space. Typically comes in the form of a reverb, but you can also use it to capture the resonance of an acoustic body, of an instrument, a mandolin, a violin, or guitars and stuff. And so the way this impulse response capture that I found works is that it doesn't have any time coefficient. There's no T, whatever you call it, T value. And that's okay for the Helix modelers because it ends up being less than a 20th of a second. When you cut down and you see, it says we have a maximum of about 20 or 2,000 samples, which ends up being at the internal operating rate of 48 kilohertz. It ends up being less than a 20th of a second. So that time coefficient doesn't really matter. And instead, we actually get to use the pickup in the guitar, and we compare what the sound of the instrument sounds like to what the sound of the instrument sounds like through the pickup. And so it creates a very specific EQ curve to kind of correct what the sound of the piezo is and make it sound more like the mic'd instrument. So that's how those new impulse responses work. Yeah, I had a couple things I wanted to talk about this morning just to make sure that the live stream was working and stuff. But as we go along here, you're welcome to ask any questions you might have about my Helix presets in particular, or just the Helix in general, or literally just anything else. I've got some equipment you might kind of see behind me. I just got a bunch of rack gear in the mail. I've been trying to build a sidecar for my home studio here. I've got a 16-channel Focusrite interface I've had for a while. And I got to put that to use finally for the first time in like 2 years since the pandemic and my cruise ship contract before that. And so I'm trying to build out this room into a little functioning live room, which has been fun. I had a recording session last weekend that was pretty fun for me. Cool. I'm just going to go through some of the Helix presets that I have. And since I've got my Stratocaster up, I'm just play some of the EGS electric guitar single coil presets. This one Space Fuzz. I made this one back when Helix 3.0 came out. I used one of the new fuzzes, I believe. Give me a second here. Yeah, we've got the Bighorn fuzz, which I believe is an older Big Muff, a very specific type of Big Muff. That's triggered on foot switch 2. We've got a delay on foot switch 3. We've got glitz verb on foot switch 1. I've got foot switch 4 and 5 dialed up here also. So we've got the original line 6 chorus. So this is something I like to do often. It kind of creates some sort of spatial thing. Sorry, I just realized you weren't looking at the screen. I've got, so foot switch 4 dialed up with a chorus. And you'll notice that it's actually always on no matter what I do with foot switch 4. It's actually always on. So the minimum setting is 10%, gives it a little bit of depth, especially after all these wet effects that can sound pretty cool. And then when I hit foot switch 4, it brings up to 35%. So it's still not too drastic. I'm going to turn it on here. typical setting for chorus, by the way, if you didn't know this, is actually 50%. So that'll be 50% dry signal, 50% vibrato. That's what chorus is. It's a mixture of a vibrato effect and a chorus. And so you can actually use all of the chorus models in the Helix as a vibrato effect if you wanted to. So I'll change this to 100% and cycle that. And now you can hear it's at a vibrato setting. And then something I like to do also is on foot switch 5, just dial up some changes here for the reverb mix. It's just something fun. Hey, what's up? Everyone's here. 15 people. That's amazing. Have I used the power cab? No, I've never used the power cab. I live in the middle of nowhere. I don't think I've actually seen one in person. I have to get most of my music gear, unfortunately, from like online retailers and stuff. And so I don't often get a chance to try stuff out before I pick it up. The power cab, I think if I owned it, I probably would still be using it in FR mode, just because I like the ability to have the wet effects come after the cabinet. And as far as I'm aware, I don't believe there's a way to use the cabinet like as an effects loop. So to send from the Stomp to get the cab simulation from the power cab and then head back and pick up some wet effects and then finally go back to the cab for the actual amplification. I don't think there's a way to do that. But maybe I'm incorrect on that. I haven't really looked into it too much, to be honest. What I've been using lately for amplification is I got a hold of a JBL tower system. I found one on sale for a pretty good price. It's battery powered, so I've been using it with my wife to play like weddings and stuff when we go out in like a field or in a barn or something. And I've used that a couple times to amplify the Helix. Most of the time, I just plug in directly into the console. And just rely on the monitors that are there for me. If I'm ever going into a place where I'm not sure what the monitor setup is going to be, like there's some sort of sound system, but I don't know the people running it, or it seems kind of like an amateur situation, I'll usually just go with a tube amp and my analog pedal board, just to keep it safe. Thanks, JP. I appreciate it. The Vertigo bag has been really good. So I've had that since 2016. I bought that when I was doing my last year in college. I cheaped out and I got a house all the way across town. So it was about a half-mile walk from my house to campus. And so I was carrying the guitar and I was using like the wood case that PRS guitars come with, which is super heavy. It's like this big rectangle thing. And I was carrying that for like half a mile and I was like, this is ridiculous. So I just shelled out the money for it. I believe it was B stock. I'm always trying to save money like that. And I didn't realize, I never realized what the blemish was on it. It seems like it was perfect. The bag itself has held up really well. The tick, I think it's called like the M80 tick or something. The extension bag you see on the top there. That's actually a replacement unit. So before I say this, Mono has been awesome and they warranted it. There was a couple issues with it. The rubber on the outside was dry rotting. The zipper had broken like 2 years ago-ish. And then it broke in the last couple months in another area. And so it just became useless to me. And some of the Velcro was kind of peeling off. But they warranted it. They replaced it. So that's a brand new tick. And it's been awesome since then. I also have a good Mono pedalboard case. This is the Electro Voice RE20, which is probably my favorite mic. I just got it a few months ago. But honestly, the Mono bag has been with me all across the world. I took that on all my cruise ship contracts. I use it for every guitar I have except the acoustics and my jazz guitar because they won't fit. And actually, I think I'm going to get another Mono bag, probably the double case. I've had a custom guitar on order for the last, I think it's coming up on 3 years. And it seems like it's pretty close to being finished. And so with that guitar, I think I'm going to get the Mono double case, double electric guitar case, and then I'll have a second Mono bag. Yeah, short answer. It's been really good. I actually prefer to. Sometimes I get this question when I fly with my guitars. I prefer to go with a soft bag. Sometimes the people at the airline are just they just don't understand the value of an instrument and they'll look at me with this big guitar case, this big hard guitar case, and they're like, I'll just throw it in under the plane. That thing's huge. It's going to take up too much overhead space. And so I prefer to go with the soft shell because it kind of gives me, number one, it's way easy to transport in the airport. And number two, it gives me an excuse. Like, although it does actually protect your guitar. I have checked my guitar one time. I was kind of forced to. It gives me the excuse, like, look at this. It's a soft bag. My guitar is gonna break if you check a suitcase on top of it or something. And so that's another reason why I use it. It's smaller, and hopefully I'll have a better chance of getting it in the overhead compartment. So I've flown probably 20 times with that case. What are my thoughts on a PRS CE24 bolt-on? I don't think I've played the new bolt-on model. I've played a couple. The CE, that's the middle line, right? So it is American made. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's their lowest tier American made instrument. I don't think I've played any CE instruments, actually. That probably sounded really high definition, me slurping coffee. I haven't played any CE range instruments. I've played a couple Silver Skies, which are kind of getting into the same price tier. And I remember the first time I played one, it was amazing. This was within a couple months of it coming out. There's a friend of mine that worked at a guitar shop in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, near Lancaster. It's actually on the Claire Bros campus. So if you're into pro audio or anything, you'll know what Claire Bros is. They do like, I don't know, probably like at least 25% of the worldwide touring acts. People come to little Amish town in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and rent all this audio equipment, and then they go on to their first stop nearby, usually like Reading, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, or something. And anyway, on the Claire Bros campus is this amazing guitar shop called Tone Tailors. And so I went there when the PRS Silver Skies came out, and I played one or two of them that just like really blew my mind. Like, it was a really good instrument. And I didn't have the money at the time, and obviously I didn't end up with a Silver Sky. But a couple of months ago, when I was looking for a Strat and I had the money for one, like a really good Stratocaster, I had this Mexican one forever. That's kind of my beater guitar. It's just not a good instrument anyway. But I was thinking I was going to get a Silver Sky, and I played a few that just kind of ended up being duds, and I didn't really find one that I liked. I found a used custom shop that I liked better. So I think, very long answer again, I think the PRS lower end stuff can be hit or miss. I would definitely say to try it before you can buy it if you can. You find a lot of useless Strat style tones in that PRS CE guitar. Yeah, I think they're just kind of hit or miss sometimes. Like, there's always going to be better instruments than some. Like, even when I picked this out, there was a couple other custom shops in the store, but this one just seemed like it was better. And it was used, so that definitely helped with the money situation. Jen says, that's what I think too for delays and reverbs after the cab, but I'm new to it. Thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. Yeah, so if you're just tuning in, I'm just kind of testing out some live streaming equipment, drinking some coffee here and hanging out. Any questions you have about the Helix or free game? I thought, if I ran out of questions to answer, I would just kind of go through some of the Helix presets that I released this week. I'm sure some of you got an email. There was a big old expansion in my preset library. So it went from being like 50 or 60. It's now got 85 presets in it. And I put the little plus sign on it because I'm always adding to it. And I also added 20 acoustic impulse responses that I captured of this Eastman PCH solid top acoustic guitar. Just kind of trying to sort out that process. I will be capturing IRs of my new Eastman, which is a much higher end guitar. This is pretty much like an OM28, but way more affordable. And I've also got a Martin D28 that I keep humidified upstairs. I'll be capturing impulse responses of those, probably of my violins too. My wife's violin, my viola. I've got some really nice acoustic instruments. And so I'm just kind of trying to iron out that whole process. Yeah, I'm just going to keep going through some of these presets. All right, disclaimer, this is not the kind of sound that I usually go for, but I thought I'd make a preset and throw it in the library. Yeah, and then I've got something I call Acoustic Simulation 1. This is using an impulse response from that package. So you'll see the labeling system here. PCH, that's the guitar. MGA. MG stands for magnetic. I had a couple different pickups that I used when I created these IRs. I spoke about it a little bit earlier in the live stream. But basically, the process I came up with for creating impulse responses heavily relies on pickups, where typically the normal process for creating an impulse response would be you'd take kind of like a part of a speaker, like the electromagnetic coil and the magnet, but without the speaker cone, obviously, and you would attach that to your acoustic guitar. You would play the sound through that magnetic coil, oscillates, and the body of the instrument becomes the resonating source, whatever you would call it. And so you run a frequency sweep through it, and that's how you grab the frequency response of an acoustic guitar typically. What I came up with is actually like a corrective EQ. So although there's no time coefficient, usually an impulse response measures frequency over time. There's no time variable here, and that's because the Helix, honestly, it's going to be less than a 20th of a second anyway. You can see sample rate here. The Helix operates at 48 kilohertz, and when your sample rate is 2,000 samples, if you do the math, it ends up being less than 20th of a second. So that time coefficient really doesn't add much. Instead, what my impulse response system goes with is that it's basically taking the sound that's coming through the mic from the acoustic instrument, the actual sound of the guitar. It compares it to the sound coming through the piezo pickup, and it creates a very complex, specific EQ curve to correct it. And so that's why I use all these different pickups. So I've got magnetic pickups. I've got undersaddle piezos that are relatively dark sounding, undersaddle piezos that are bright sounding. That's what the B stands for. And then also, where is it? BT, that stands for body transduction pickup. That's when you have like, would be like the K&K Pure Mini, or lately I've been using the Journey Tech system. 3 little piezo contacts on the underside of the acoustic guitar. I think that's the best kind of acoustic pickup, honestly. But anyway, what I'm saying is I created a pickup, an impulse response. That's what I'm looking for, with a magnetic pickup. And that's how I'm getting a kind of an acoustic simulation tone. I recommend using the middle position if you have it. This is not going to be as good as an acoustic guitar, not close. But in a live band mix, you know, if there's only 1 or 2 songs that you're using an acoustic guitar for, it makes sense to try and pass with this. It's out of tune now. This one's way better. So this uses the actual Boss AC2 simulation, acoustic simulation. So yeah, and then I also have a jazz preset for a Strat guitar, for a guitar with single coil presets, single coil pickups. Sorry, it's been a while since I did that. Yeah, so I'm just going to keep going. I think here I'm guitars to my PRS with humbuckers. Useful. That's what I thought you meant. I'm also putting this pedal lately, which is something I built back in December. Haven't to use. I used it on a recording session for the church I work at. Before, you know, we were doing in-person services for Christmas, we did a recording session. That was the first I used it. And I have a whole series of videos. I think I'm really like starting to get it dialed in and figured out. And I'm glad. I'm really happy, like the way I put everything together. It seems like it's been working. The day that a cable goes bad in this thing, it's going to be a very bad day for me. That's the one thing I'm worried about. But I've got a gig tonight on it. I did a bunch last week, and basically the way I have it laid out, if you haven't seen some of those videos from a while ago, is that I like to use the HX Stomp. And in my opinion, this is the best way to use it. If you're going to use Helix amp simulation, you might as well use the overdrive and compression and stuff in the Helix as well. If you're someone that wants to use the Helix amp simulation and you want to use the HX Stomp with external pedals, in my opinion, the best way is to keep the HX Stomp for your overdrive and amp simulation. It just sounds like it works better to my ears than using like analog overdrives into the front of a digital amp. I did that for a while. I used the dual fusion, which isn't bad. But there was always this like really top end, like fizzy quality to it somewhere in like 12K that you can't dial it out. Even if you put like a high cut on the cab, you can't really dial out that sound. It ends up sounding really fizzy, like I said. And so I was much happier when I ended up using some of the built-in overdrives and stuff. So I use the built-in overdrives amp simulation in the Stomp. And I have the Wampler Terraform operating in pre and post mode. So that's for mono modulation. It goes into the Stomp. And it's also in the effects loop. So certain modulation you want before overdrive, certain modulation you want after. And so, yeah, like phaser, flanger, and univibe and stuff, I'll run into the front of the Stomp. Then I'll do my amp simulation and overdrive, hit the effects loop of the Stomp. It'll hit the Terraform again, run through a couple other pedals. I've got my volume pedal after all my overdrives. I've got the Electro-Harmonics Pitchfork, which probably about 2 years ago, I did a video just demonstrating putting pitch shifting pre and post overdrive. And in like 95% of situations, it actually sounds better after overdrive. In my opinion, it sounds a little bit better. It is harder for the pedal to track. The Pitchfork tracks really well. If you're using something like the Boss OC3 or the OC5, I would not recommend doing it. It has a harder time tracking. But the Pitchfork, which is the same engine as the Electro-Harmonics POG, polyphonic octave generator, and the POG2, that stuff, it works really well after overdrive. And then just barely off camera here is the Electro-Harmonics Freeze, which is essentially a sustain pedal. We've got the Chase Bliss Warped Vinyl. And then it enters stereo. So we've got the Empress, Wet Effects, the Echo System, and the Reverb. Finally, back into the Stomp. The Stomp is the last pedal in the chain, which means that I'm able to use the headphone output. You can see I'm actually monitoring from the side here. So I've got the left and right mains running to a DI box. It's the Pinstripe DISO, which is a fantastic direct box. Someday you're going to need a ground lift, and so I think it's worth it to own a good DI box. So the left and right mains from the HX Stomp go into the DI box, and then the headphone output runs to the side. And so what you're hearing is from the DISO. What I'm listening to from my studio monitors is is from the headphone output of the Stomp, and that just seems like it works for me. Yeah, I'm just going to keep playing through some Helix presets, I think. If you're just tuning in, I'm just kind of trying out some of this live stream equipment. Thanks for listening and bearing with me. I should tune my guitar. I should probably tune my guitar. Also on the pedal board is the Boss TU3S, which is a stompless TU3, which means that it's basically always on. I like that. And then I've got a volume pedal, which wasn't working because it's not in the effects loop of some of these presets. But basically, if I want to silence my signal, I'll just roll back on the volume pedal on the expression, which is actually controlling the vertex boost. So it keeps the volume pedal out of your path. So the tuner's always on. It also has a really good input buffer, which is useful. What's up, Thomas? If you're talking about the PRS DGT model, this is actually a McCarty, which is, I believe, the same guitar but a little bit thicker. It's literally like the same model, but the McCarty's just a little bit thicker. This is it does have the half moon inlays, which was an option on the standard range PRS guitars between like 2008 and 2011 or 12. And so that's what this is. I also bought this one used back in like 2012. Funny story about that. So I bought it at a Guitar Center because that's really all we had where I was growing up and stuff. and it was in the used section. So I was basically just looking in the used section. I wanted a really good instrument, and purchasing a brand new PRS kind of wasn't in the equation for someone that was still in high school. And so I bought the guitar. I came back a month later, and in the store, there was some guy who so his story was he decided he hated PRS guitars and he was going back to Gibson, and he owned like 20 PRSs. And he was trying out some Gibson custom shop that I believe he purchased that day. And so I talked to him. He was the previous owner of this guitar. And I don't know, I just thought that was funny. This guy like obviously had too much money to be spending on guitars, and he decided he didn't like PRS anymore. So he went back to Gibson. This was like 2012. Super weird situation. Hey, Thomas. So you just got a Terraform. You saw my vid. I'm confused on the factory presets that I can't change. How do you deal with presets? Okay. The Terraform is really, it's not laid out. It's not intuitive, in my opinion. I feel like they could have done a better job with it. It sounds awesome. I don't like that it's only got 8 presets on it. And I also find it kind of annoying to figure out how to store presets on it and recall them with MIDI. It was pretty hard to figure out. So, this is something nerdy that I do. I actually save all my my manuals in my computer for all my guitar pedals and stuff. So what do we have here? Terraform manual. Yeah, let me see if I can help you out real quick. I was thinking about making a video because it was such a process. By the end of it, I knew that it would hopefully help someone else, but I don't know. I never got around to it. And truth be told, probably not that many people would watch it. So saving, are you asking specifically about saving a preset in the unit or recalling a preset, or are you talking about like using MIDI? Because using MIDI is a little bit difficult too. What guitar is that Ibanez with the groovy headstock? Oh, this is a Talman, which is kind of a cult classic guitar. I won this guitar in one of those online contests like years ago. I was still substitute teaching, and I had like the worst day ever. And then my friend texted me. He's like, "Hey man, I think you won a guitar." So this was from Stringjoy. It was literally just like a put your email down kind of thing, and I won it. It's not an expensive guitar, but it is pretty nice. I have flat wounds on it right now. You can see it's kind of a Telecaster design, semi-hollow. This one was sold for like $400 and was only made in 2017. The semi-hollows are really hard to find. And so I do use it occasionally. It's got flat wounds on it right now, like I said. So kind of an interesting sound. Thomas, let me know about what kind of situation are you using the Terraform for? Are you using it with MIDI, or are you just talking about saving the presets and recalling them on the actual unit? So yeah, if we look at the manual for it, try and find the place here. Saving a preset. Saving a preset is simple, of course. Maybe not. It's been a while since I did this. I saved my presets, and then I haven't thought about it since. So set all the controls to the desired setting. Press and hold the preset switch until the preset LEDs begin to blink. Press the preset switch until the desired preset location is indicated. So let me see if I can try and do this without overwriting my current presets. So let's say we want to create preset. We want to create a custom tremolo sound. So I pulled up the harmonic tremolo there. Hopefully you can see it. It's probably pretty far away on camera. Set all the controls to the desired location. And then we're going to press and hold the preset switch until the preset lights begin to blink. Should be blinking now. And at this point, you cycle through. So this is preset 1, 2, 3 on your tiny screen. Hopefully you can see it moving. 4, 5. And then when you find the spot, it looks like you press and hold the preset switch until they blink again. And at this point, if you wanted to associate the preset with a MIDI program change, this is when you send the MIDI program change from your MIDI device to the Terraform. So the Terraform can only save 8 presets, but it can respond to any MIDI program change message. So I set 0 as bypass. You can actually have 8 presets plus a bypass state. So I believe MIDI channel 0 is the bypass state. 1 is going to be preset 1, 2, 3, and so on. Cool. Yeah. Thomas says, I can't change a factory preset. Line 6 keeps the less. Oh, wait. Thomas, you're talking about the Helix, or you said line 6? I thought you were talking about the Terraform this whole time. I can save a preset, but get to it only through the switch. Yeah, are you trying to use the HX Stomp to send a MIDI message? How does line 6 come into play here? Hey man, maybe send me an email. I'm happy to like try and walk through this with you. Try and figure it out. So alexpricemusician.com/contact, and there'll be like an email form there. I think we've talked before, actually. I think you might have sent me an email in the past. Tips for a worship stereo chorus kind of thing. Worship stereo chorus. Here's the thing. I do a lot of gigs playing in churches, but I don't really like. I definitely don't do my homework on it. I've got a couple worship patches that get me like 90% of the way through everything. So chorus, I like to use the HX Stomp for stereo modulation. So after the effects loop, I'll have like stereo tremolo or stereo chorus. And so I like that sound coming after reverbs. And this is just me. I can't speak for like what Bethel or Hillsong or what some of those other mega artists would do. The sound I like is delay into reverb and then finally into chorus after that. So don't set the bring some Landau for Sunday morning church. Thomas says I have a Podgo. I'm actually also getting a Podgo, I believe. I've had so many requests for Podgo presets that I think I'm buying one. So anyway, I'll send like delay into the reverb unit and then finally into stereo chorus. I think the key is keep the rate relatively low, kind of like a mid depth, and then the mix knob is where you can really dial in, like if you want the chorus to be present or not. Like I said a little bit earlier, chorus is actually on a scale of 0 to 50%. Anything above 50% gets into vibrato territory. So a chorus signal is typically 50% vibrato, 50% dry signal. So if you want a chorus sound, 50% is going to be your maximum setting, actually. Any of the models in the Helix go up to 50%. Anything past that, it becomes more like a typical vibrato effect. So start at 50%. If you want a little bit less modulation, a little bit less chorus in the signal, drop it back to 40 or 35 maybe. I think that's where I'm typically sitting. Is I set the rate real slow, the depth kind of in the mid range to getting higher. The other thing you want to keep in mind is if you have the rate high, you want the depth low. If you have the depth high, you want to keep the rate low so it doesn't get into that like seasick kind of John Scofield tone. No offense, John Scofield. I love that guy. Yeah, and then the mix is where you can dial in the sounds that you want. I also generally kind of like a brighter chorus sound. So also kind of a hidden feature I feel like on, wow. That's what you look like when you share the screen and you're still looking at the screen at the time. Anyway, so a hidden feature that you might not know about the Helix is that there's sometimes effects that are only in the stereo realm. So if we look at mono here, we don't have any of the rotary. We don't have the Trinity chorus, which is a Boss dimension. We flip to stereo here. We have the double take. We have Trinity chorus, which I'll pull up. We also have the rotary effects. So let's pull up the Trinity chorus and see if I can demo a classic worship chorus song sound. Let me, I'm actually going to pull up a separate preset here, which has the effects loop. I'm going to boost the output just a little bit. This is the preset I'm using tonight. It's my Magnatone preset for my premium amp tones. I changed it a little bit, added an effects loop because I use an effects loop on my board, and also a compressor at the start of the signal path. I also removed the onboard solo boost that I usually dial up. because I have a dedicated boost pedal on my rig. So anyway, here's what I have, and I got to remember not to save it so I don't mess it up. I've got chorus here. And I'm going to pull up on my MC8, my Worship kind of stock sounds. So my stock sound would be this. And that's just coming from the echo system and the reverb. So the way I lay this out is I just press stock, and that's just kind of my minimum wet sound for this music. And I have the lead sound. And then I have what I call cloud, which is supposed to emulate that classic Strymon cloud setting, which has become a staple of the genre. So let's leave it on that. And now I'm going to pull up a chorus sound. This is not in the HX Stomp. This is not what I would normally use for chorus. If you listen to it right now. Where's my chorus? You can see I have it pulled up with a MIDI control message, but I'll just turn it on here on the screen. Sorry, I just realized you're not looking at the Helix screen again. So this is probably not the sound I would use for Worship chorus. I would go to the Trinity chorus. And let's just dial it in together real quick. So like I said, if you want kind of that classic sound, keep the rate low. You can turn up the depth a little bit. I think the stock sound that the Helix pulls up frequently is usually pretty good. Yeah. And then I'll turn down the mix. Let's go 35%. Yeah, so like I said, I'm not someone that really does their homework and dials in all these sounds perfectly for the worship genre. But that's just kind of the stock sound I use. Do you really need the Terraform since you have the Stomp? I'm thinking about getting a Stomp of HX effects. I need an extra block on the pod go at times. So for me, it's about workflow. I could dial in all these different presets and do the same thing I do with the Terraform, but I love having a dedicated unit. It makes it easy that, you know, if I'm in a rehearsal and someone says I want a slightly different sound, I can just bend down and dial it in quickly on knobs. I don't have to menu dive. The reason I like having all these separate units is for that reason. And also it's kind of cool. So the way I've been working lately is that the MC8 controls all my MIDI controllable pedals. So it'll handle dry or wet effects rather. I'm sorry, the window's open outside. It's so nice out, but someone's doing like gardening or something. So I've got, the reverb, the echo system, and the Terraform that the MC8 is generally controlling. It's also controlling the modulation effects that I have room for in the Helix. I like to keep the Helix dedicated to overdrive and amp simulation. And that's because, you know, if I want to change something, I don't want to have to press one, you know, if I press one switch here, then it's it's a stock sound and I don't really have much room to go outside of that. But when I control modulation and wet effects separately from overdrive, I just have a much larger palette that I can choose from. And so that's kind of my reasoning. That's why I do it that way. I know it is a little bit more tap dancey, but the way I work is I'm kind of more of an improviser. And I don't like to practice parts. I'll learn them. Sometimes I listen to them in the car on the way to the gig, and that's how I learn them. And so, I don't know, it just works well for me. But I mean, I definitely could be doing everything I do with this board pretty much just with the HX Stomp by itself. I just like having this workflow and it's fun. Newbie question: what would you recommend to switch presets on the Stomp in a live situation? I would like something simple, as I need them to fit on a pedal train. Yeah, pedal train Nano. So you have the original HX Stomp, right, Jason? In your case, I would probably. So you want to be able to switch presets on the Stomp in a live situation. The way I work is I like to work with one preset, and I'll operate primarily in snapshot mode, or Stomp switch mode. And that's because, like I was saying with the pedal board, this way I get a bunch of different combinations of sounds. You can use foot switch 1 by itself. You can use foot switch 2 by itself, or you can combine them. And you can see how you have 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 4, or 2 and 4, and you create all these different combinations. You have a lot more sounds to pick from. But you're saying that you want to switch presets on the Stomp. So I'm thinking you're operating more in preset mode, where you build a preset with a very specific sound that's very digital signal processing heavy, and you want to be able to switch between that stuff. If you want a dedicated switch to go between presets, I would say get an external controller. I use the rock stock stuff. Saturn Works also makes great pedals. I have like 4 or 5 just auxiliary pedals to use with HX Stomp or any other brand here. Let me actually pick them up, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I have a couple here, and these are just not being used right now. So this is the one I believe that works with the HX Stomp. So yeah, what you're looking for is a normally open momentary switch. That's the only thing. It doesn't matter what the graphic on front of it is. If you go to Saturn Works website, Jason, are you based in the United States? I believe Saturn Works, I forget the guy's name. He's just one guy. He builds all these auxiliary pedals to order. So you'd order from him, and it'll be at your house probably within 2 weeks. And so I would set this up to control preset up and down for you. And then on foot switches, on the onboard foot switches on the Stomp 1, 2, and 3, I'd probably go with using snapshots. If you're set on using preset mode, that's probably because you're using a lot of DSP heavy effects, and you have all these different sounds that you want to switch between. I also did a video. If I could link to it, I would. It'll be a couple months back. I just talked a little bit about the different ways to set up the HX Stomp. I believe the title is get like 13 sounds from one HX Stomp preset or something. And obviously, I'm just talking about creating the combinations of the different Stomp switches versus using snapshot mode, where on the original Stomp, you only have 3 snapshots per preset. So I would recommend checking that video out. Yeah, as far as videos on my channel, my small channel goes, it's probably one of the more popular ones. If you have the HX Stomp XL, I think this is something that's a little bit more suitable to being able to use it as your entire rig. In my mind, the original Stomp is something you want to use some external pedals with. But the Stomp XL is much more capable of being your entire rig. And that's just because it has all these switches built in. So the way I like to use this is I'll actually use the up and down to page between snapshots. We get 4 snapshots on this unit. And then I'll have Stomp switches here for extra effects. So I'm using the page up and down to go between snapshots 1 through 4. 1 is usually clean. 2 is like a rhythm, crunch tone. 3 is overdriven. And then finally 4 is like a very high gain sound. And then I'll set up a Stomp switch for solo boost. I'll set up a Stomp switch for a delay, a reverb. And in the same way that the big pedal board works over here, where I have all these different units, then I just have a larger combination of tones to be able to pick from at that moment. And then it also has a dedicated tap delay, which is useful. Jen is asking, what do you use most from your presets? Do you go with your premium amp tones most since you have a larger pedal board and you keep going back and forth on expression? I'll answer the first one first. So on my large pedal board here, this is, I'll be honest, I mean, well, the gigs are happening a little bit more and more, and it seems I am using this. I was thinking I would use this mostly for like ambient music creation or record situations. I'm kind of like scared to take it out in case a cable goes bad or something, and I just literally have no way to fix it. The good thing is, if something did go bad on this board, I have a couple presets on the Stomp that I would probably just disconnect the cables from and use the Stomp by itself, along with that white controller, which is the rock stock foot switch 4 and 5 for it. So your question was, what do you use most from your presets? I use everything, truthfully. There's probably some stuff that I don't use, like the high gain stuff. I made for people that wanted that sound. That's not really my type of playing. On that big pedal board, I use the premium amp tones usually, because it's stuff that I've really been strenuous about dialing in across different sound systems and just trying to get everything really well balanced. I've used it with a lot of live groups a lot. And so on the large pedal board where I'm using the HX Stomp primarily for overdrive amp simulation and stuff like that, I'll use the premium amp tones. Like I said earlier, I modify them slightly. I'll add an effects loop block. I get rid of the solo boost since I have a dedicated boost pedal, and I usually add another compressor in front. So yeah, I use the premium amp tones on the large board. On my back when I was using the Stomp by itself a couple times, I would use the complete preset library, and also I use the Stomp XL. Wow, Johnny, that's so nice. I've never had someone do that before. Thank you. I'll answer your question in a second. On the Stomp XL, I would use the complete preset library presets, because this is something I use pretty much essentially like all by itself. I do have a little, I don't know where it is. I think it's down. It's in my basement right now. I have it's basically an acoustic preamp / direct box. It balances the signal, gives me a ground lift if I need it. And I will use this with an expression pedal with that external pedal. Jen, to answer your other question, you keep going back and forth on expression pedal or not. Looks like you don't have one. So I do use an expression pedal with the Stomp XL. All right, so I've gone through this a lot. I haven't talked about it in videos, I don't think at all, but personally I've gone back and forth on it a lot. I was using the Boss expression that you see down here with the Stomp when I was working cruise ship contracts. Basically my rig was the dual fusion, the Stomp for modulation and amp simulation, the dual fusion by Wampler's and overdrive pedal. I would use the expression if I needed wah, the Helix wah would work, or volume, and then I would use the Empress reverb and echo system for my wet effects. That was my entire rig for the cruise ship contracts back. Feels like ages ago now. And a couple times I think it's because I don't think it's a fault of the Boss pedal. I think it's because the Helix operates just with a TS signal and not a TRS, which would be more ideal for an expression. I think because it operates with a TS signal, I was actually running into issues. So like sometimes I would roll back and I would still have like 10% volume. So I'd be, I don't know, tuning at full volume or something through the house mains, or I would roll it back and I'd hit a chord or something, just not thinking, and it would come through the mains. It would, or my in-ears, or like towards the end of the contract, I actually just had to disconnect it entirely and not use a volume because I couldn't, like, it would, after a couple sweeps, and then I'd have to power cycle my HX Stomp. After a couple sweeps, it wouldn't go back up to 100%. It'd go up to like 70. And so I just decided not to use an expression through the expression inputs on the Stomp. I still do have that expression because it's routed TRS. It goes through the Mission Expressionator, which then distributes it one of three ways. It'll go in the A position to the boost. When I hit B, it'll go through MIDI to the Terraform. Yep. Or no, it's direct in there through the Terraform. And when I hit C, it goes to the MC8, and the MC8 distributes MIDI expression signal to the Stomp. And that's much more reliable than TRS. I did get an expression pedal used with my Stomp XL. It's the Dunlop expression. And I've used that a bunch, and I haven't had any issues yet. But I think it's still just the medium of using a TS signal for expression versus TRS. So hopefully that answers your question. Maybe not. I don't think the expression is very reliable with the Stomp if you're using the expression inputs. In other words, if you have a way to use MIDI for expression, that's going to be way better. All right. And Johnny, to answer your question, love your content. Thank you. What's your favorite way to do a solo boost? Foot switch, volume pedal, expression pedal? Thanks. For a long time, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was using a volume pedal before I had the Stomp on my analog rig. And basically I would try and do like, full on is going to be a solo boost. And when I tried to mix with the band, it would have to be like kind of somewhere in between. That was hard for me to do. And it became unreliable and sound guys would hate me because my volume was all over the place. And of course, towards the end of the night, it was just always up all the time. So my way is that I like to leave the volume at 100% when I'm playing pretty much anything. If I'm really digging in or I have a louder sounding overdrive tone, I need to sit back in the mix. My volume pedal is after overdrive so that it's actually controlling volume and not just the intensity of the overdrive. So the way I like to use solo boosts is I'll assign permanently a foot switch on the unit. On the HX Stomp XL, I'll have one of these foot switches be a solo boost, or on my large rig, I'll use a dedicated boost pedal there. You can see it's the Vertex boost. And so I think that works well because sometimes, you know, I'm playing a clean part that I want to be able to boost, or sometimes I'm playing a mildly overdriven part that I want to be able to boost. If you set up a snapshot as your lead snapshot, there's no way for you to play a clean solo. Like your lead sound, it's going to be distorted no matter what. So I like having snapshots set up to scroll between dry sounds and then have a dedicated foot switch so I can boost any of these different dry sounds to a solo level. And typical solo boost for me is like 4 decibels. So you can do that with, I never use the boost blocks in the Helix because it just wastes a block. And, you know, on the HX Stomp, we only have 8 blocks. So I tend to use a parameter. I'll control, and I'll show you how this is set up if you haven't done it before, Johnny. So a solo boost would be like, let's set up the level control on this cabinet. It's actually a stereo cabinet. And I'll assign that to foot switch 4. So I'll say, you know, right now it's stock set up, I believe, at 0 decibels. It's probably unity gain. And when I press foot switch 4, I want it to go up by 4 decibels. That's how I would do it. Maybe I'll name it boost, and then I'll make it a white color because that makes sense to me. So I'll call it boost. And then when you press it, it boosts up by 4 decibels. And when you press it again, it'll drop back down to 0 decibels. Hopefully that answers your question. I don't know. I talk a lot. Sorry. Danny says, I see a warped vinyl on your board. That's probably my favorite pedal of all time is the warped vinyl. And I do have that synced up with MIDI. So I have a bunch of different presets. Sometimes the way I set up the, it is like really, it takes a long time. But the way I'll set this up, if I'm trying to create like a very specific sound, is I have a bank here on my MC8 where I can access a bunch of different presets for the echo system or reverb. So I'll press, or the warped vinyl, for example, I'll go to this bank and it says Terraform, warped vinyl, reverb, echo system, looper, hold. I believe I made that like a freeze preset. And so I'll press warped vinyl, which goes to another bank. And now I have 8 selections of sounds. Actually, like 16 selections of sounds here. And so I've got heavy vibrato signal or heavy chorus. And again, I've talked about this a few times already. Just the balance between vibrato and chorus. So it's the exact same effect, just with different parameters on the mix knob. So heavy vibrato, heavy chorus, medium vibrato, medium chorus. What am I doing? This is a guitar channel. I'll play guitar a little bit. So there's my, quote, heavy chorus signal from the warped vinyl. Got a heavy vibrato signal now, which is just the same thing as the chorus, but without the dry signal. That's the chorus now. Now we're going to medium vibrato. Medium chorus. That kind of sound that you hear is the lag control, changing parameters as well. So sometimes if you want to get a very lush chorus sound, it's actually useful to delay the chorused sound in relation to the vibrato. Delay the chorus sound in relation to the dry signal. And so you're hearing that quick squiggle as I switch between. The chorus sounds are going to have that delay. The vibrato sounds, you don't want the delay because you're going to hear that latency because it's 100% vibrato signal. You can hear it shifting there. And then I called it green vibrato and red vibrato. just because that's the preset color that shows up here on this switch, on that LED. Those are the onboard 1 and 2 presets. So Chase Bliss also does something called ramping, which I've had this pedal for like 3 years and I really haven't gotten into it at all. I do want to try it. I got one of the Bliss Factory, basically a fuzz factory with Chase Bliss controls and MIDI controllable, and also the ramping. I haven't explored the ramping yet. There's this really cool band. I don't know if they use Chase Bliss effects, but they use a lot of ramping modulation effects. It is called Crumb. Yeah, C-R-U-M-B. And you should definitely listen to them if you love modulation. Really cool band. I think I'm going to listen to them today because I forgot about them until I mentioned them. Anyway, thanks for watching. I think I'm going to wrap it up here in a few minutes if you have any last questions. Yeah, kind of the point of this live stream was just to test some of my equipment, so it's a little unorganized. If you guys enjoyed this, I think we had like maybe close to 80 total viewers. Looks like we have 14 now. I saw it was up to like 22 at one point. If you dug this kind of thing, just let me know, and maybe I can do it again in the future sometime. I'm going to leave this live stream on my channel because I feel like it went well, and also I want to watch it back and figure out what I'm doing. We have another question. Hello, Alex. My question is on my HX Stomp. Listening on headphones, the clean sounds good, but the distortion sounds horrible. Fried or over, burnt out. How do I get a good headphone sound? I do have a video on creating presets specifically for use with headphones with your HX Stomp. So here's the thing. If you create a preset for live use through a professional sound system, it's probably not going to sound good through headphones. And if you create a preset with headphones, vice versa, it's not going to sound good through sound systems. So for this reason, I would advise creating completely separate presets, depending on what medium it's going to be amplified through. You're going to want to mess a little bit with high cuts, definitely with headphones. What headphones are you using, by the way? If you had a name on your thing, I would say your name, but it's just AZDH. I have a couple different sets of headphones. My favorite set lately is, let's see, these are the Sennheiser HD6XX, which are it's a more affordable version of the Sennheiser headphones. These are legendary. The normal version is like $400. And if you go to massdrop.com, this is like their exclusive model. It's really good. I heard good reviews on it. It took like 1 or 2 months to get them. So the way Massdrop works is that they'll bulk order them, and then whenever that order comes in, once they reach a certain threshold, they'll finally ship them out. And so you end up waiting a little bit to order them, but you save a lot of money. This is the Sennheiser HD6XX from massdrop.com. I have no affiliation with them. That's just what I use. I also use the Bear Dynamic, the DT770s, which are closed back headphones. Okay, so you've got the Sennheiser open backs. Those are probably pretty good headphones. Yeah, so like I said, I have a whole video on trying to dial in decent headphone sounds. I find that you need a little bit more compression with headphones to make it sound realistic. Also, just like the idea of having like a speaker directly against your ear just kind of makes it hard to feel comfortable. I don't think headphones are ever going to sound as good as like a good FR speaker or, seriously, a guitar amp. It's just kind of what we have to do sometimes. And so when I'm making presets for headphones, I will put a more extreme high cut on the cab block. I will probably dial in way less presence in the amp block. So if you're using an amp model that has a presence control, take that down plenty. Boost the mids and the bass. And this is going to change depending on what headphones you have and if they're bass heavy or not. And then also pull up a little bit more compression. In my taste, I like to use a little bit more compression when I'm using headphones. So yeah, that's just my advice. Are you just practicing with them, or are you using them for like recording and stuff? It gets hard if you're trying to use a preset for recording because it ends up not coming out very well. If it sounds good in your headphones, the recorded sound is not going to sound like you think it does when it comes through, big speakers and stuff. Anyway, I think I'm gonna thanks. I think I'm gonna wrap up the live stream here. So thanks for tuning in and hanging out with me this Saturday morning. Hope you have a good day, and maybe I'll see you in a future one. Take care.